Is Friday, June 12th. This is the Christian Commute. I am your host, Seth Dunn, and you're heading home with me. Although I guess I'm stopping at the ATM first. I have to get cash money out for my children. They're going to church camp. They have to eat along the way. This might be second time this year that I've gone to an ATM for cash. It's weird. I don't think I've written a check this year with my hand on a piece of paper. Maybe one. But anyway, old-fashioned economics, but newfangled communication method, the podcast. Not radio, the podcast. And I think this is the first time in a while that I've done a full show. Or a full week of shows. And by the way, a full week of shows is 2 shows now. Tuesday, Friday. So I've had a couple Fridays off for vacation, or at least off from driving to work, from working at home. So you're welcome. I do not have a full show. Nobody has written to the inbox in some time. Here comes a yawn. If anybody has a question about Christian theology or apologetics, you can write to SethDunn88 at gmail.com, SethDunn88 at gmail.com, or dial 470-315-0875. The Christian Commute is your theological roadside assistance. So if you're Aaron from Texas, Jeff from North Georgia, you can write in. Martha from Florida, Mary from North Carolina, Susan from Missouri. Some of my writer-inners who have written in frequently, who haven't submitted a question in a while. Jeff from Slow Driving, Florida. Daryl from Ohio. The people who use the inbox line. You know, there's some podcasts that give shout outs to their Patreons and the people who pay. Let me tell you something. I know your name, even if you don't pay, because it ain't like that on the Christian Commute. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in today's show title, Josh Howrton, Pay for Pray. Or I may say Pay for Pray, Josh Howrton. He's gotten pretty popular nationally in the last couple of years. And here's what happens when somebody gets popular nationally. They probably deserve a Y Project website. And this guy's on my list. And you guys know the wheels of the Y Project turns slowly. But I think this guy deserves the next one. We'll get to that after the Bible chapter review. We're still in Luke chapter 13. We're in verses 10 through 14 today. Jesus is teaching in the synagogue on the Sabbath. Nothing wrong with that. But he also heals on the Sabbath. Also nothing wrong with that, but somebody's going to take exception and say that there is. And he began teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. And there was a woman who for 18 years had a sickness caused by a spirit. And she was bent double and could not straighten up at all. And Jesus saw her. He called her over and said to her, "Woman, you are free from your sickness." And he laid hands on her. Immediately she was made erect and began glorifying God. But the synagogue official, indignant because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath, began saying to the crowd in response, "There are 6 days in which work should be done. So come during them and get healed, and not on the Sabbath." And Jesus is going to rebuke him in verses 15 and on and correct him. But we're going to stop it right there. This Sabbath official, as Jesus will explain on the next Bible chapter review, Lord willing, values this woman less than an animal. Because if your ox is in a ditch on the Sabbath day, you're going to get him out, even though it's the Sabbath. But this woman, and listen, it's not just that she has back problems. This is not scoliosis here. The Bible says that she had a sickness caused by a spirit. This is demonic. There is a woman being crippled by a demon. She's been crippled by a demon for 18 years. And listen, people didn't live that long back then. So this is something like, this could be half her life or more. It doesn't say how old she is. But this is somebody who's really struggling through life. Someone who is being oppressed by satanic forces every day. Jesus sees this, has mercy on this woman, and heals her. And instead of being, number one, impressed that this has happened, and number two, joyful and grateful that this woman in the synagogue has been healed, the synagogue official is mad because Jesus did it on the Sabbath day. And his answer is, you should have come back tomorrow. This is the Sabbath day. I'm sorry we can't do that yet. You're going to have to wait till tomorrow. He's not against the healing. Do you understand that? He's not against the healing. He's like, clearly people are being healed, but we're going to have to do this. You're going to have to come back tomorrow, which is during business hours. You can't do this right now. He's the guy at 10:31 who won't sell you a biscuit at McDonald's. Let you come get a biscuit tomorrow. It's 10:31. I'm sorry, I can't sell you a biscuit. Except this is so much more serious than McDonald's biscuit. This guy is callous and uncaring, and he doesn't understand that the law is made to help people, to make things better. And with that, we'll end the Bible chapter review. We will talk more about it tomorrow, not tomorrow, Tuesday, Lord willing, when we examine Jesus' response. And as I said before, there's no question in the inbox. So let's talk about Josh Howrton and his pay for prey schemes. I mentioned this a little bit yesterday on the Tuesday blurb about the Y Project. On Tuesday I'm like, y'all give money to the Y Project. The Y Project's so important. But I'm on there and I usually will say, hey, this is the kind of thing that these churches do. These churches, right? Stained glass masquerades, seeker-sensitive Ayatollah of rock and roll, coffee bar goat churches in the purple haze led by Pastor Electric Blue across multiple campuses, I might add. And there's just some kind of unbiblical thing they're always doing. And I had seen a snippet of a video on Twitter. And this is how things are put on Twitter, because they have to put the most outrageous thing on there because people have 30-second time spans. And it's Josh Howerton talking about being with people in a meeting who are givers of the church and saying this is maybe a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them to ask their pastor a question. And when I saw that, I'm like, what a typical megachurch pastor, multi-campus pastor. He doesn't pastor anyone, really. It's impossible to meet him. And when people do get in a room with him, they feel like it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I could call my pastor right now if I wanted to. I've got his cell phone number. I could drive to his house. I could ask him to come and be like, I know I go to a small church, but it's just so ridiculous. And of course, the mega church people will tell you, oh, well, there's campus pastors and associate pastors that they can talk to. Notice talking to those underlings is not a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, like talking to senior pastor Josh Howard. I mean, this guy has clips on YouTube. Can you believe it? You get to talk to him. This is a guy you watch on the podcast. You get to be in the same room. He's going to answer your question. And I took great offense at that, and I compared it to how, I don't want to say how they used to do, how Rockbridge probably still does, but used to advertise that it does. Rockbridge, whyrockbridge.com, which is here in Dalton/Calhoun, as well as Ringgold. I think it's Cleveland, Tennessee now. They, a few years ago, and this is on the Why Rockbridge website, they advertised for, I think it was a campus pastor, some low-level or second-level underling pastor, somebody to work for Pastor Matt Evans, not the preacher man guy. And part of the job description of this pastor was to meet with two high capacity givers a month. And to their credit, I met with some elders from Rockbridge, and they said, that we shouldn't have done that. They said this other guy did it who used to work there. He's dead. So it's not like I can call him and say, you repent. He's dead. So nevertheless, I mean, you were an elder at the church when it happened. One of the guys was an elder then. Like, why didn't you stop it? But that's how they built it. Right? I mean, I'm not looking for reparations like saying, well, you built Washington, D.C. with slave labor, you need to pay reparations. But that's how they built that church. That was the mindset that built it, is we're going to pay more attention to the people who could pay. So when I saw Howrton say that, I'm like, of course that's how they act. It's a multi-campus megachurch. That's how they do, that's how they fund themselves. And it made me think of Crosspoint, whycrosspoint.com. And Will Goodwin, who's, his title is like experienced pastor or something. Jimi Hendrix and the experienced pastor. It's his job to make sure people have a good experience. I guess he's supposed to keep them free from crying babies and turn the spotlights on at the same time. And nice guy, by the way. I was hearing him preach one time when I was doing the Why Crosspoint series, and he said this number, and I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but it was like shocking. Not shocking, I guess, because you could expect it from the GOAT people who go to Crosspoint, who are there to be entertained like a service. But a high percentage of people gave less than $100 a year to Crosspoint. Like, most of the money that was given came from a very high echelon of people. And he didn't say rich people or poor people, just a small number of people. And it was even beyond the Pareto principle, right? The Pareto principle is that 20% of the people do 80% of the work. It was even worse than that. And the number's a couple years old. But he quite plainly admitted, like, most of y'all around here don't give anything. And you think, well, where are they getting all their millions of dollars? Well, the wealthy people are the high capacity givers. They're probably getting special attention at Crosspoint as well. And it makes me think of like the senior pastor as Fade Roth from Dune. Do I need to single you out for special attention? You're a bad guy. You're a Harkonnen in my mind. All right. So I'm pretty sure that goes on there, although I've never seen an advertisement saying it does. And I do know, according to their employment documents, that when they're seeking out people to work there, staff people, that it plainly says, yeah, the job expectation is you give 10% of your money to Crosspoint, to the church you've donated. Now, I'm not condemning giving 10% of your money away to church, but I will say this, and this has to do with Howerton. I'm not going on a Crosspoint tangent. Let's say I made $100,000 a year. I don't, but in these examples, I always make $100,000 a year because it's easy math. And I purposed in my heart to give away 10%. And I said, I know this is not biblically required as a tithe. I know I'm a New Testament cheerful giver, but I think 10% is a pretty good model because that's what they were giving away back in Old Testament times to some degree. I mean, sometimes it could be more if you really look at those Levitical laws. But 10% is a good number. All right, it's a pretty good, there's a biblical foundation for it. That's fine. So I'm going to give away $10,000. And I'm so generous, I'm going to tithe on my post-tax income, not my pre-tax income. Sorry, Alan Taylor. That's another thing. Alan Taylor, you need tithe on your pre-tax income, not your post income. I'm going to just go ahead and tell the story because I went on the rabbit trail. I was at the new members class at First Baptist Woodstock once, and the Sunday school pastor, like the education guy, Sunday school overlord, his name was Alan Taylor. He came in there. He's like, you need to give the church, and you need to tithe on your gross. And some lady just asked him, well, why the gross? Why not the net? Which I thought was a reasonable income because, we're getting dinged for Social Security and Medicare and income statement. And she's like, where does it say that in the Bible? And his answer was, where does it say not to? Which I don't think is a very good argument. The guy, that's just how he argued. Where does it say not to? He had a lot of authority that way. I don't know if that lady's mind was changed or not, but I was like, oh, what a stupid answer. Anyway, for the sake of my math, I'm making $100,000 a year pre-tax, and I'm tithing I'm giving 10% of it because Alan Taylor brainwashed me to do it. He convinced me. Now, do I have to give this 10% all to my local church? Maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe my local church doesn't need $10,000. Guess what? In my situation, my local church didn't need $10,000. If I gave my local church $10,000, they could pay rent for like 8 years. Because we have a tiny rent payment, and we have a bivocational pastor on, with a housing allowance. I mean, we don't have a lot of expenses, and they're not hidden. By the way, you can see them on the wall. I want to say the budget's like $50,000, maybe less. I don't know. But I might want to say, well, why don't I give $5,000 to church, and then I give another $5,000 to the International Mission Board to sponsor missionaries. Or maybe I'll give $5,000 to church and another $5,000 to a Christian I know who has cancer and needs it. I mean, you can give anything you want, right? But the thing is, when I make the money, it's my money. And work is saying to me, like, this is what you're worth on the market, CPA Seth. This is $100,000. But when CrossPoint pays somebody $100,000, they're saying you're really only worth 90% because you got to give 10% of this right back to us. See how that works? I ought to be free. If you expect me to be a 10% giver, that's fine. But shouldn't I get to decide what I give it to? When you're saying it's your money. And by the way, that is the expectation of Josh Howrton at Lake Point Church, and that's why I'm talking about this. So there was that, just it's sort of infuriating little Twitter clip. Well, there's a YouTube channel called Honest Youth Pastor, and the guy who runs that channel somehow got a hold of the full video. It was about 20 minutes or so that Josh Howerton did. And this video was training for church planners. I don't know if he was charging them money for the training or not. Was training for church planners on how to do what's called in the industry advancement. That is managing giving, okay? So some of you guys may have never heard that term, advancement. But when you're in the nonprofit world, advancement is a big deal. And my first experience with it was when I worked at Marist, the private school run by the Order of the Marist Priests, not the Archdiocese of Atlanta. It was its own little entity, okay? And it's a super nice school. At that time, this was like 2007 maybe. It cost $15,000 a year to go there. And cars, in parking lot full of really nice cars. Because when rich people, they give their kids their old cars too. So some of y'all get an old Honda Civic, but if you're rich, you get an old BMW. So it's just 16-year-old kids driving fancy cars, a smart board in every classroom. And if you don't know what a smart board is, it's because you're too poor. And just super place, super facilities, great people, great school. But they had an advancement department, and there was a woman, her name was Lisa, she was the VP of advancement. And they had an entire little building, an entire little office with the VP of advancement, and 2 advancement directors who worked for her. And then they had a photographer and a newsletter lady, and then a personal assistant or department assistant. And these people's sole job was to call people and ask for money, sort of to schmooze the alumni and get the alumni to donate stuff to grow the school's endowment. So all of these people cost money. I mean, the advancement officer lady made a lot of money. And they paid for themselves and more by soliciting donations. And one of the ways to keep the donor pool going was to publish the alumni newsletter and send it out. Right? So I'm sure those of you who went to college get a newsletter from your college, the alumni newsletter, because they're, hey, don't forget to donate some money to your college. Well, if you go to a private high school, they do the same thing. And I asked Lisa once, because I thought to myself, I will buy the naming rights to my office. I made $35,000 a year at the time, okay? I worked in the help desk. This was a long time ago. I made $35,000 a year. That was my salary. And this was in Dunwoody, which is an expensive place to live. I lived in Cartersville and commuted. And I wasn't married and didn't have any kids. I lived with my parents. I had a house, but I didn't stay in it because I was alone. I was lonely. I didn't move in my house till I got married. So I bought a house and kept living with my parents. And I'm like, I got money. I mean, I only make $35,000 a year, and I'm a single guy with, I don't have any expenses. I live at home. If this is $1,000, I'm going to buy the naming rights to my office. So I shared my office with the other help desk guy, and we were on the 2nd floor of the library. So I asked Lisa, I was like, hey, how much are the naming rights to my office? And I thought she was going to say $1,000, $2,000. I'm going to do it. She said $35,000. And I was like, that's what I make. So needless to say, I did not buy the naming rights to my office. But that's what they do. They sell naming rights and stuff. And when you're an advancement officer, you sort of schmooze the rich people. But you guys really don't think about church having an advancement function. But when you're at one of these seeker-sensitive multi-campus churches where the people aren't really discipled along and you can't really depend on a base for paying their way, as it were, the senior pastor takes on the role of advancement. He sees himself as a guy who's supposed to raise money. And these guys who found their own churches and grow them into multi-campus places, what they do is they go teach other people how to do it. And I've said this before. Remember when you watched Saturday morning cartoons and then an infomercial would come on and it was a guy selling a real estate seminar saying, I made $1 million a year in my real estate business. I just started it from scratch. And if you come to my seminar, I can teach you how to do it. So that's what these mega pastors do. It's not something you learn in seminary. They're like, listen, now you might have went to seminary, you might have went to Bible college, you might know how to preach the Bible, but I can teach you how to grow an organization and cast vision. So that's what this training video was, and it was geared towards church planners, and Josh Howerton was the subject matter expert, teaching them like you can do like me. And it was patently unbiblical, just evil. And the thrust of the video was basically pay more attention to rich people, here's how. And go look at the Honest Youth Pastor YouTube video. It's an hour and a half. It's worth your time. He breaks down what Howrton is saying. So he plays 20 minutes of the video and then he gives commentary. He's nicer than I would have been. But let me just bring some of the stuff up. So we've talked about how the book of James says don't show preference to rich people. And Howrton comes right out and he says, if there are people in your church who give an obscene amount of money, and he gives the example of somebody selling a business. And where I work, that kind of happens all the time because I work at a place that's owned by private equity. And what they try to do is they buy a business like the one I work for, and then they have the business that they bought buy other businesses that do the same thing or do similar things, and they use economies of scale to make them more profitable as a whole, and they repackage that and sell it. So I have some kind of idea of how this works because my company will buy family businesses. So what happened is some guy, he'll be 30, he starts a family business, it gets wildly successful, he's in his 50s, he's thinking about retiring soon, his kids don't want to take it over, so he'll sell it. And with one of these guys sells a family business, they make a lot of money, it's millions of dollars, because the value of their business has grown. Not a family business, but I think SpaceX went public today, and just the regular workaday people who had SpaceX stock are millionaires now. Elon Musk made a ton of money on it. I think he's a trillionaire now. But that's what happens when somebody sells a business. Even if they don't go public, they have a bunch of money. This is one-time payment, and they also have streams of payments because that's how it works. And these people, so I'm going to give something to church off of this. So you might have a guy who's giving $10,000 a year, and all of a sudden he drops a $250,000 donation on the church. And Josh Howrton's like, if somebody gives an obscene amount of money like that, invite them to a lunch. And he gives this example of inviting the highest givers, what he calls financial leaders, to a lunch to be recognized. And this is quite obviously showing preference to wealthy people, like James condemns. He says when a wealthy person or when a rich person comes into your church, don't give him the good seat and then tell a shabby person, hey, you sit over here in the bad seat. Okay? And Josh Howerton says it's totally not that. And this is the example he gives. He says, people give their time, talent, and treasure. So you thank the people who volunteer their time, you thank the people who volunteer their talent, so of course you're going to thank the people who volunteer your money. You see how he tried to justify it in that way, but if you watch the video, that's really not what's going on, because you could just send them a note to thank them. I mean, hey, thanks. I mean, we all get that note, by the way. When you give money to church, the church sends you a letter at the end of the year and says, dear so-and-so, thank you for your gift of X hundred or $1,000 for the fiscal year 2025, because it's for tax purposes. And the treasurer at my church, he's like, hey man, I'm behind on my notes. I was like, you don't have to send me one, I don't care. I itemize Trump tax cuts. Or I said, I don't itemize Trump tax cuts. But it's because of our tax laws, churches send everybody a little email or letter in the mail telling them what they gave for their tax records. And it says thank you. Nobody sends it and says, this is what you gave, full stop. It's like, thanks for supporting the ministry of the church. But that's how he justifies it, that these people get to come have a special barbecue lunch. But it's quite obviously preference for rich people. And notice what he said. He says, this is their opportunity, your opportunity to unlock something in them, unlock their giving potential. Not unlock someone's volunteer potential or time, talent potential. No, it's like something might be hanging these people up who have money and capacity about giving, and this is your time to unlock that. So the reason they're there is not really to thank them. They're being thanked, but the reason is to unlock something further. And that's when he made the comment about it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them to actually be in the room with the senior pastor. All right. So yes, he's showing preference. And can I just say this? Rich people expect to have preference shown to them. When you give a lot of money away, you expect to be treated a certain way. Okay? When you buy a wing, when you donate money for a wing at the children's hospital, you want to walk in the door and you want the door to have your name on it. Like if I gave $1 million to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta to put a wing on one of their satellite centers, like they're going to call that the Seth Dunn Wing or the Dunn Family Legacy Center. That's how that works. And I'm going to get invited to dinners, okay? So when you're a big donor, you expect to get invited to events for the donors. We're just going to give an update on the church, but we're going to invite all these wealthy people who can totally give more money to the Capitol campaign. Like I know I gave $250,000 and the barbecue lunch you just fed me cost $20. But I expect the $20. I expect some FaceTime because of this. And by the way, you shouldn't. When you give money away, you shouldn't expect any kind of special recognition for humans. If you're giving it away for the recognition or some other benefit, you have your reward in full. How about that? You're supposed to be giving money away in a secret way. The Bible says don't let your left hand or right hand know what your left hand is doing. But this is totally ignoring that. It's giving preference, and it's playing into the pride that the wealthy people have to be recognized. And for a short time in my career, I worked in wealth management, and the firm would have dinners for those people, and they'd have little information sessions for those clients. It's making them feel important, because that's what those people are. They're clients. And it's really one of the things that Howrton suggested, and then he does this as insidious. He says, go around the room, tell everybody your name, what you do, and what Lake Point Church means to you. Go around the room, tell everybody your name, what Lake Point Church means to you, and also what you do. And you've got to understand what this is. This is giving the rich people an opportunity to network with one another, okay? So if you're a rich person, you want to be around other rich people and have contacts for other rich people because they can help you do something. Like if I own the dairy farm, I want to network with the guy who owns the trucking company and the guy who owns the pasteurization factory. I don't want to network with the cowhands. There's a million of them, and I need 10, and I don't need to network with those little peons, okay? The little blue-collar people I don't need. This is why people who aren't good at golf get memberships at a country club. Business owners will get a membership at a country club so they can take clients there to play golf, take them to eat at the nice restaurant, and so they can network with the other people who can do something for them. So you understand that charity, like from a Christian charity standpoint, you talk about true religions to do good for orphans and widows in their distress. You know, those orphans and widows, they can't do anything for you. It's truly altruistic. But networking is not like that. Like, I'm going to be a part of this charitable organization because I'm going to meet the right people, right? If the show Mad Men isn't too offensive to you, you can find a clip on YouTube of when Bert and Roger, the owners of the accounting firm, are offering Don Draper, who comes from a poor background, a partnership in a bigger role, and now they're saying, Don, now you need to go to these charity events, because now you're at this level and you need to go do the stuff you don't want to do for the sake of networking. And that's how really wealthy people operate. So when Josh Howerton is putting the rich people in a room together, he's giving them an opportunity to be around the other high capacity givers, the other movers and shakers, and introduce themselves. That's why he says, tell what you do. He said, don't tell us because an icebreaker could be anything, right? What's your favorite sports team? Well, what are your hobbies? How many kids do you have? You know, you can do anything, but what do you do? Because the people in that room are not going to be like, well, I'm a forklift driver. You know, I'm a barista. You know, I roll up burritos at Moe's. That's not them. It's, well, I'm a CPA, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I own a paving business. It's going to be somebody like that. And they can hear like, oh, I need that guy, I can partner with that guy, I can do that. These are the people I want in my circle. So you understand, he's letting those people know, because you've given a lot in church. We have this 15,000 member church, and you've given a lot of money. Now you can weed through all the people that it's not worth your time to talk to, that you really don't have any koinonia with, and I'm going to connect you with the best of the best. And now you're a giving leader at this church, and now you're in this position of influence. And hey, if you own an insurance company, or you're selling life insurance, everybody knows you're the guy to get life insurance from at this church now, whether it's the rich people or the peons. Guys, that's how it works. Even at First Baptist Woodstock, it was a mega church here in Georgia. There'd be certain people who were supposed to sit up front. They were the big givers and the big entrepreneurs. All right? That happens at these mega churches. So number one, he's giving them a networking opportunity. Was that number two? I forget where I was. And the second thing he does is he says, tell people what Lake Point means to you. And this is a sell, because somebody's going to get all blubber. Oh, my wayward son got saved here. It changed our lives. And people think, wow, this is what I'm giving to. He's doing it's little mini vision casting. So it's network, and it's playing on their heartstrings for more money. And he outright says in his video, tell the people, the reason you're here is we're just here to thank you. That's not true. The reason they're there is because they gave a lot of money. And the reason that they're there is because you want more. And you're trying to cultivate a relationship with those people. And one of the things he makes a suggestion of doing is finding out a prayer need from one of them, then waiting a month. I guess don't pray for it right then. Waiting a month and sending them a handwritten note and letting them know you're on my mind. And I'm sorry, but that's simony. It is. So you say, what is simony? Remember Simon the sorcerer in the book of Acts, and he saw Peter and the apostles doing miracles, and he said, well, how much do I have to pay you for you guys to teach me how to do these miracles? Because he's thinking, I'm a magician, and I have paid other magicians to train me in the ways of being a magician. Magicians don't just tell you your secrets. So I can pay you, and you guys can tell me how to do these miracles. Like, you'll give me some of the Holy Spirit. And what did Peter say? May your money perish with you. Like, this is not how it works. And simony, the name that stuck on for simony was in the Middle Ages, when rich people in the Catholic Church would pay to be a bishop. They didn't pick the guy who was the best qualified to be a bishop or a cardinal. If he was a rich family, he could pay and he would get that position. So it was pay for play. And I think this is even worse because it's pay for pray. So Howrton gives the example of somebody opening up and say, well, one of my children's wayward, they're far from God. Then he's going to send him a handwritten note later and say, you're on my mind, I'm praying for you. Now the senior pastor, who other people don't even have access to, is praying for you. And the Bible says the prayers of a righteous man availeth much. But when it comes down to it, there's no special power of the prayer of the senior pastor versus the pew sitter next to you. But in people's minds, there is. I've told you about the old black lady who came to my house I used to go to church with. Well, this is a nice house, Seth. You need to have Pastor Tim over here to bless it. That's why he didn't have any special powers. He can come help move some furniture. But it was something like that. I was like, what? But anyway, do you understand that Josh Howerton, he's got 15,000 church members and he's supposedly the pastor? He's not praying for everybody for their specific need and sending them a note. And he would probably argue, well, some campus pastor's praying for them. But to get invited to the lunch or the dinner and to get to network with the other rich people and to get to ask a question to the senior pastor about, well, why do we do it this way or could we do this? You've paid for that access. And now you've not only paid for that access, but because you paid and because you have a high potential as a giver, Josh Howerton is choosing to cultivate a relationship with you through letting him know that you know that you're on his mind, and he's praying for your need. You understand they have these churches that there's a card somewhere, or you fill it out online now, I guess. Do you have any prayer needs? And we're going to pray for them. I mean, look around the next time you go to church. There'll be a card somewhere. What are your prayer needs? And you can write it down. Somebody's going to pray for that. But if you pay enough money, the senior pastor who preaches and has the podcast and has the YouTube video, he'll pray for you. Do you understand it costs extra money at Lake Point to get Josh Howerton to pray for you? If that's not a form of simony, I don't know what is. It's just wicked. I think he's an evil man who's not qualified to be a pastor, because he doesn't truly care about those people. He cares about their money. He's giving training on how to bilk the rich people, to spear the whale, to run or fund your church organization, your church plant. And he says stuff, your vision's only as big as your provision. Like, yeah, we get it takes money to make this thing work. It takes eggs to make the omelet. Like, we get it, but you're giving preference to the rich. There's no other way around it. And then another part of that video, and we've touched on this, is how to have a loving conversation with staff members who you suspect of not giving 10%. And it's just like, well, how can we expect people to give 10% if you don't? So it's a training video on how to hire people for 90% of their market value, and how to raise money by finding the people who have the capacity to give it. And that they have the capacity to give it makes them more important than other church members. And going back to his little specious argument about, oh, well, you're thanking people for this, but like, everybody's giving, right? He says they send a note to every first-time giver. But, if you give a lot, you get invited to the lunch and these functions. But let's say that there's a guy on the praise team who can absolutely shred. He's a Van Halen level guitarist. That would be like giving him more of a thank you than the bassist and the drummer and the keyboardists who are just okay. You see, they're all doing their time and talent, but the one guy's got deeper pockets, if you will, when it comes to playing the guitar. So all you people listening to Josh Howerton clips online and sharing those and thinking, oh, this guy's really standing against the culture, this guy's a really good pastor, he's just a talking head on social media who cares more about rich people than people who aren't rich. And he has no business being a pastor. If he wanted to be a talking head on social media, hey, go for it, because Matt Walsh isn't a pastor. Okay? You could, or what's that guy? Jason Whitlock's not a pastor. If you just want to make social commentary and theological commentary, have at it. But a pastor is a higher calling, and one that shouldn't give such obvious and sinful preference to the rich. And let me tell you something. If you're the rich person at your church and you're giving a lot of money, number one, good for you for giving to church. But number two, shame on you for expecting something for it. Because God doesn't need your money. And He could gladly give it to somebody else if He so chose. Thanks for listening to The Christian Commute. Lord willing, I'll be back with you again tomorrow. As always, God bless. And as always, remember, Christianity is not about getting saved. It's about being saved.